I think the best way to look at an organization like the IAEA is within the context of which it was created. It's obviously an international body and it's governed by the United Nations. So ultimately, while Iran is discussing wanting to, keep things technical rather than political, it's a highly politicized body in the first instance. So it could want this as much as possible, but this all depends on the political negotiations that will be going ahead. So as long as there's political will for there to be an agreement, then there's not much that the IAEA can do in and of itself. It can only really give recommendations, and then it's up to these states to basically implement or to decide where to go further on that front. So I don't think that there's going to be much of an impact, especially as the negotiations are set to restart on the 29th of November. And therefore, this is more like a formality, a box-checking exercise to see if they can sort of hammer out any kind of preliminary agreements just before the main negotiations restart. Being their escalated position in terms of negotiations, that they want all sanctions lifted, whether they're related to the 2015 accord or not. And that way that they, obviously they'll be able to bolster their economy, which has been flagging for a very long time indeed, and especially since Trump reinstated the sanctions in 2018. So that said, Iran has always shown itself time and again to be highly pragmatic, and they are willing to play ball. While they do give off this hardline, strong rhetoric, history has shown how it's willing to negotiate, even in terms of its its enemies, such as Israel. If we remember in the 1980s when Saddam Hussein of Iraq was developing his own nuclear capabilities, they were nowhere near the level of advancement that Iran has today. And yet Iran actually actively collaborated with Israel to destroy those nuclear capabilities. So if it's willing to cut a deal with Israel on something like this, then I'm sure in 2021 and going into 2022, that Iran will also be willing to cut a deal now to preserve its strategic gains that it's made over the past few years, particularly in the light of the Arab Spring falling apart and its influence in Syria, Lebanon, Yemen, and beyond. That's the reason why it keeps enriching. But I mean, the counterpoint to that would be to say, oh, well, it's only enriching uranium to increase its bargaining position and to stop the United States from further slapping back full sanctions, which is a possibility. As long as it can get China and Russia on board, then full international sanctions could easily be slapped back against Iran. So it could be doing this to increase its bargaining position. However, I do believe that it wants nuclear capability, and the reason behind that is that it looks at countries, for example, like Pakistan, even North Korea, despite it being a pariah state, it's able to survive. Obviously there's multi-dimensional reasons why it's able to survive and last as long as it has. But a primary factor behind all that is the fact that it's armed to the teeth with nuclear weapons. Such countries you can only push so far, you can only do so much too. So having nuclear weapons for Iran means that it can outlast any kind of hostile actions by foreign powers. And it also secures its territorial integrity, because no one's going to want to invade or cause a big military bust-up with Iran if it's armed to the teeth with nuclear weapons and can threaten not only Israel, but also the Arab world and major U.S. allies like Saudi Arabia.
Okay.